So the next panel will be moderated by Richard Crespin, and we'll really talk about collaboration. And for those of us who've rolled out programs and who've rolled out technology, we know the value of collaborating internally, knowing who to call and who should be involved, and we know what happens when we don't collaborate internally in terms of making sure the right people, the HR people, the multiple lawyers in our case, as you heard Jeff talk about yesterday, our colleagues in diversity, really making sure, again, we have all the right people at the table to make sure our programs are a success. And so we'll talk more about that on the panel today. But before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about our moderator and about the panelists who we have here. So Richard Crespin is the CEO of Crespin Enterprises, which is a boutique consulting firm advising businesses and nonprofits on how to work together to solve big problems. You guys want to sit? That was weird. Every nonprofit is a business, and every business has a social mission. They don't always know it or act like it. So Richard works with firms to find their unique social mission where they can make significant impact, and with nonprofits to build programs that attract companies as partners and donors. And on our panel, we have Desiree Yancey from TIAA-CREF. Desiree has led and managed diversity initiatives for major investment banks over the past 10 years. Currently, she's the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for TIAA-CREF, a Fortune 100 financial services organization and the leading provider of retirement services in the academic, research, medical, and cultural fields. She joined TIAA-CREF in 2014, so very new. I understand those challenges. And is responsible for leading the firm's diversity and inclusion strategy across multiple businesses. We have one of my partners in crime, Jeff Harrington, back from Prudential, and he wore a tie again for you guys today. As you learned yesterday, Jeff is our Vice President of Administration in Prudential CSR Department. And our department includes the Foundation, Social Investments, and Corporate Engagement. And really, in his role, he's responsible for system strategy, communications, finance, risk management, metrics, and analytics. He does a lot to keep us moving. Also on the panel, we have Jeff Sidney from PwC. Through a leadership approach that's inclusive, collaborative, and mission-driven, Jeff leverages more than 20 years of corporate responsibility and management experience to guide the strategic operation of PwC's corporate responsibility team and program initiatives. In his cross-functional role, he collaborates with all areas of the firm to understand CR's different drivers and ensure the firm's numerous initiatives deliver financial, social, environmental value to stakeholders. We have Brad Pierce from TD Bank. As program manager for TD Bank, Brad is responsible for developing, managing, and leading TD Bank's strategic environmental programs. His team's goal is to embed the environment in everything that they do at TD Bank and to be as green as their logo. Brad has a passion for connecting people, drawing out big ideas, and collecting stories. To that end, Brad helped develop TD Bank's innovative methodology, the 4 H's of environmental engagement. And last but not least, we have Sabrina Spitatello joining us from Sanofi US. Sabrina is the Associate Vice President of North American Corporate Social Responsibility and Foundation Social Investments. Her responsibilities include building a strategic North American platform for community outreach and employee engagement that include executive involvement, volunteerism, disaster relief, educational forums, and a CSR network and employee ambassador program. That's a lot. She's an officer for the foundation and is co-leading the design and relaunch of Sanofi's Foundations for North America that has shared ownership with the larger CSR team. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Richard.
Thank you, Spring. I am Richard, and I am going to be your moderator for today's panel. Before I bring in some questions from our panelists here, I want to get you all engaged and into this conversation, because I really do want this to be a conversation. We spent a lot of time on a phone call and a couple different phone calls talking through what we're going to talk about today, but you're paying the bills. This is your panel. We want you to be an active participant in this. And to do that, I want you to do a couple things for me. First of all, I want you to kind of lean in. You know, psychology today says that people fear public speaking more than they fear death. So think about that. That means at a funeral, somebody would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. So our panelists here are transporting us with their vulnerability and with their bravery. They are up here to share their stories, but we really need you to lean in and help us ask the right questions. So I want you to be thinking right now about what your questions would be, because I'm actually going to get off this podium in a minute, and I'm going to roam around Phil Donahue style. I might pick on you. So get framing in your mind what questions you might want to ask our panelists. But first, I want to ask you a question. First of all, I want to know how many people are here from a CSR-related function? Show of hands. Okay, that looks about 60%. How about from diversity inclusion? HR? How about from a department not directly related to CSR, diversity inclusion, or directly charged with employee engagement? One, two, a handful. Okay. For those of you that are directly charged with these programs, how many of you think that people in other departments know how to measure and evaluate what you do? Okay. Yeah, I don't think a single hand went up. So that's what we're going to kind of get into. Spring did a great job of introducing our panelists, so I'm going to start just with asking them a couple of questions about what they're up to, kind of set our stage for us. So first of all, I've got Jeff here, who's from PwC. Jeff's got some great data that I'm going to ask him to kind of parse out for us on how to measure employee engagement and how to relate that to engagement and retention. But first, I want to ask each of our panelists, as we go down the line here, each of you comes at this from a different perspective. You come from everything from corporate administration to philanthropy to environmental programs to diversity. Give me the lay of the land. Tell me what you're up to and how it fits into the business strategy for your company. Jeff.
We have a 100% employee engagement commitment within our company, related to our CR activities, our corporate responsibility activities. And we measure that, first of all, by engagement in the activities, whether they give, whether they volunteer, take part in a green team, what have you. And we just move the needle on ourselves because we considered engaged one activity, and we now, at the beginning of our new fiscal year, will consider engaged meaning 2 activities. We did this fancy algorithm, and we were going to do this really, we're professional services firms focused on accounting and advisory services. We like to make simple problems complex. And so we tried to do that. We finally came back and said, no, actually, everything's equal. If you participate in these activities, that's how we're going to count it. And in fact, we now have a $160 million commitment to youth education, a 30% reduction in our carbon footprint is our goal. $50 million foundation, $15 million a year in pro bono, and numerous other programs. But that's kind of the fundamental aspects of our CR program.
Awesome. Desiree, I know you're new, so we're going to go easy on you, but tell us what's going on at TIAA and what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm a little over 30 days into the job, so very, very new. At TIAA Craft, as a not-for-profit organization, we don't have a foundation. So a lot of what we do, most of what we do around community relations and engaging our employees are twofold. We have a large volunteerism program that really allows us to tap into the 9,000 plus employees at TIAA Craft, primarily based in New York, Charlotte, Denver, and Louisville, Texas, to support the organizations that the employees want to support. And we do that through America's Charities as the umbrella organization. But we also have our employee resource groups, and they are also instrumental in helping us bring our employees to the fold of giving back to the community. And we have probably about 4, I would say, key opportunities for employees to give back from an enterprise standpoint. We have backpack and knapsack days where our employees can really help underprivileged communities prepare for going back to school. And we also do a lot of work around toy drives, holiday giving. And April is National Financial Advisory Month, Literacy Month. Mm-hmm. And as a financial services firm, we have so many of our employees who are actually going out at the local level, working with other organizations such as Junior Achievement to really engage in that type of learning. So it's across the board at all of our properties, enterprise-wide, and traditionally when we think about how we measure that, it's in a variety of different ways. It's certainly through our culture survey that we put forth to our employees every year, and it really allows us to see how they are engaged in the organization as a whole. And our volunteerism, if you want to call it that, and our employee giving is a part of that conversation.
Perfect. Jeff, give me the elevator speech. What's going on there, and how are you tying it into the business strategy?
So at Prudential, we spent actually the last year retying everything back into the business strategy. Our CSR group, as Springen mentioned, is foundation, social investments, and corporate engagement all combined under one roof, and they've been doing great work. But we really, I hate the word, but we really went through a transformative process in the last year, because no matter what we're giving from the foundation, and we're investing in $100 million in investments, $30 million or so in foundation, that's nothing compared to the financial resources that Prudential has. So we found that if we can collaborate with our business units and align our purpose with our business units, instead of having $100 million that we're investing, we're leading a $1.2 trillion organization in terms of how we can start to invest. So what was really neat for us is, as we developed our approach and our strategy, we brought that to our advisory committee, which includes the chairman of the company. We walked through the entire strategy, and they didn't actually ask a single question about the strategy. The first word out of their mouths was bravo. We were then, quote, invited to go talk to the senior management committee of the company, and invited then to go talk to the full board of directors for the company. We've received nothing but interest, excitement, and questions about how we can get involved every time we talk to anybody within the company. So we're looking at this as a great opportunity to leverage the company's resources, including all the human capital, and collaborate all the way through using the skill bases in the company, the financial resources in the company, and all the expertises that we have.
I know you've talked, when we talked before, you have really looked at how to combine financial capital with human capital, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so is that through those skills-based volunteering programs, or how is that really playing out?
So I should call Spring up because she's doing this, but yes, our volunteerism goes kind of the gamut from, the good work in a day kind of thing, all the way up to pro bono services and board service. Very much bringing the skills in, from the company into the community, and kind of leveraging that. But I think importantly, it's also collaborating across the resource groups that we have. So we're looking at opportunities to take the investments that we're making and aligning those with human capital to leverage the effect of the investment, the financial investment, with the human capital investment.
I know one of the topics that was big yesterday was about year-long engagement. I want to come back to that with the whole panel, but in particular to kind of hear how you guys are doing that. Brad, tell us what's going on at TD and what you're doing there. I also really want to hear about the 4 H's. Tell us what the 4 H's are.
Sure, thanks. Let me first just start by telling you a little bit about TD Bank. We're a top 10 retail bank here in the U.S., Maine to Florida, about 27,000 employees, 1,300 stores. Any TD customers out there? Oh, great. Thank you very much. So TD is a service-driven organization. We're all about our employees and our customers, so much so that we're open 7 days a week. From an environmental perspective, we want to be an environmental leader, really. As he said, we want to embed the environment in everything we do. To do that, we focus on building programs that are built to get the environment into the core processes of the bank, so much so that we can enable cultural transformation. And then, to your point about the 4 H's, we want to engage all 27,000 employees, and that's a difficult thing to do. But the way that we've decided to do it is to build meaningful, lasting, measurable programs that deliver results to the CEO, to the bank, to our employees, to the customers, and the communities we serve. And we do that by bringing our employees through a cycle we call the 4 H's of environmental engagement, and that's to raise awareness to the environment, to get them connected to the environment, so much so that they're excited enough to do something about it, whether that's at work or at home, and then to talk to people about it, share it with customers and with other employees. Derek talked about that yesterday. The millennials want to share the things that they're doing with others, and that's an important part of it.
So that's head, heart, hands, and horn?
It'd be head, heart, hands, and horn. That's correct.
Awesome.
Horn being a bullhorn.
Sabrina?
Good morning, everyone. I'll put this into two categories for priorities this year: engagement and giving, right? So the area that I'm in. So in terms of the company I work for is a healthcare company, so the patient is very important to us. So how we align with the business and leadership is this is patient-focused, what we do in terms of how we give. But it's very focused in terms of we're not trying to have volume. It's the signature partner approach year-round, transparency of not just who we're giving, but how. And it's not just dollars, it's time. And that's where the engagement comes in. So whether we expand our CSR ambassador program through the education or capitalize on the amazing skills that our employees have in terms of their expertise. It's not just the volunteering in terms of extra pair of hands, which is very important, and we'll do that quarterly or with team builders, and we'll continue to do that year-round. But this is how someone has worked their way up in terms of their career, has a certain specialty, and it helps with capacity building for our key nonprofit partners that we're really investing a lot of time into to help them have a broader impact on the communities that they serve and the patients that they serve. And so then we bring that back in to close that loop and tell that story and show that connection with employees. So whether they were involved or not, they see that their colleagues are. So it's where we start and where we end, and then how we deepen it each year and build off of that. And so this year we're going a little bit further.
So you guys are a French company, right?
Global
Global
diversified
company,
health.
headquartered in France. And then, but that answer that you just gave there, is that for North America or is that for globally?
Yeah, so we are a global company in over 100 countries, and this response focuses on North America in terms of the scope that I'll speak to and our cultural approach and what works best locally, because that's what we do. We respect local approaches and styles and cultures, because what will work here and in North America will be very different than in another area of the world.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, we're going to jump around a little bit, and I'm going to kind of try to pick up the pace here so that we can get through a lot of different questions, and I really want to pull you guys in from the audience into this conversation. So a minute ago, I just asked the audience how they think people in other departments view their work. And I've heard a lot of different terms, just even here, much less over the course of the last few days, about what we do. Diversity, sustainability, employee engagement, CSR, health programs. What do these things mean, do you think, to other people in your organization? If I was to ask somebody at your company from another department what you do, how do you think they'd answer? Jeff?
Well, that's a good question. I think some of them, I presented that I'm not a revenue generator, I'm a value creator. Mm-hmm. And I, depending on who I talk to, I wink when I say that. Because some people think, that's just a clever ruse. But I think it's actually, it's quite important. So one of the ways in which we've kind of formulated our program is by connecting with sourcing. And sourcing for us is recruitment. And we're a human capital firm. We don't exist without our staff. We don't sell anything except our services. And so they are the foundation of our business. And in fact, about 3 or 4 years ago, we measured our engagement and the impact we were having and who we were attracting to our programs. And we were not attracting the best and brightest within the firm. We were attracting the people who, maybe were on their way out, were disengaged, what have you. And we've switched our program and engaged differently, and now we are attracting across all parts of the firm. And in fact, there is a positive correlation with ratings now, improved ratings and engagement in CR. And fundamentally, our attraction and retention numbers that CR has been able, we've been able to correlate our success with, is yielding about $165 million a year ROI for our CR program.
What did you do? How did you switch from attracting the
Essentially,
low
we
to the
went
high?
from non-skilled volunteering to skilled volunteering.
Huh.
And it's funny because I'm a pretty good example of atypical. I, at the end of my day, don't want to do what I do. I want to go paint a wall with a group of kids, or I want to do something less skilled. But that's actually not indicative of the average PwCer who wants to take their skills and further them to make an impact in the marketplace. And so we've switched. It was 25% of our volunteering 4 or 5 years ago was skill-based. It's now reversed. 75% is skill-based. And so we're able to measure the impact, we're able to, collectively, and we're also able to engage much more significantly and build skills alongside what we're doing.
Was it serendipity? Like, did you go to skills-based and this worked out, or did you
No, we did a
survey
study
them?
and we saw that we were attracting the people and not generating the value we wanted to, so we quickly hid that study under, we didn't talk a lot about that
Right.
study, but we said we've got to do something different. So we went back and we engaged through focus groups and internal and external stakeholders, and we developed a new strategy of engagement.
So aligning the program with what you thought the employees
And the
wanted.
beauty is that connected us back to the business
Right.
much more, not only in terms of attraction and retention, but youth education and financial literacy, which is our primary focus. You can imagine a professional services company focused on that makes a lot of sense.
So you got to get the data and then align the program with the data. Desiree, I know you're new, so if you want to answer this question from your old perspective or across multiple organizations, feel free, but how do you think other departments look at what you do?
Sure, I will answer it wearing a hat of just having a variety of experiences in my career without naming a particular company. So for me,
So the bad stuff is all the old companies, the good stuff is all the, yeah, I got it.
Never, ever, ever, no. So for me, as a diversity and inclusion professional, I would say that the majority of people at the companies where I've worked, and probably in this room, think of the work that I do as focused on ensuring that organizations have representation of women and people of color. And that's part of what my role is, but I see my role as someone who is given the charge of enhancing the workplace for all of our employees so that everyone can reach their potential. I have to work across the organization with all of my HR colleagues focused on talent acquisition, recruiting, talent management. I have to work with communications. I have to work with the lines of business. I have to understand the values of the organization. I have to understand how I can play a role in being a culture carrier in the organization. And someone earlier today, I think it was Kevin Esposito, right? You talked about silos. One of the things that I'm most proud of in the work that I do, and this is going back to my previous organization, and it was a very siloed organization, the work that I did in diversity and inclusion, and couple that with volunteerism and giving back, broke down so many of those silos because it brought the organization together under one umbrella. Everyone had a stake at wanting to represent the company in the most positive way. So for diversity and inclusion practitioners, our role is really a role that is full of breadth in terms of who we touch in the organization, and it can also be one that has a lot of depth.
That seems to me like that's kind of the conundrum, if you will, that a lot of times diversity and inclusion is looked at as a compliance function, not necessarily a value creation opportunity, and you're kind of aligning it as a value creation opportunity.
It is absolutely a value creation. I think if you look at Diversity Inc., who does a survey of the top companies in the diversity and inclusion space, those organizations who are able to not only diversify their employee base, but make it an inclusive work environment, outperform the stock market. So if that's not value creation, then I don't know what is.
Thank you. Jeff?
So this question really intrigues me because I think I can give an answer from both perspectives. Because I joined CSR at Prudential about a year ago, but had been at Prudential for over a decade at that point. And honest to God, before I took the job, I thought that the work that they did was actually a separate company. And I have the folks from our CSR team convinced that I know everybody at Prudential, because I think that I do, but I didn't believe that it was part of the company. I thought it was this separate organization, did great stuff, that there was a relationship based on history, Prudential Foundation, kind of like Ford Foundation. And all.
Oh,
But I
wow.
didn't think that it was at all related to the company. And when I joined the group, it seemed that that's also the culture that they had for a very, very long time. We actually had to have a Pru 101 series where we brought investor relations in. Hey guys, this is what we do. By the way, we don't just sell life insurance. There's a lot more to it. And so, having that perspective, it's fairly clear to me that most of the company really doesn't have much of an idea of what it is we do. They think that there's some volunteerism. But I think that's part of the reason why the organization is now so embracing of how we're shifting our strategy so that it is a strategy that aligns. They can see how they can participate in it. And also, Prudential, I'm sure most people don't know, but was actually founded as a socially purposed organization. It was founded to help the working class poor. And so we're the connective tissue to all of that for the rest of the company. They're starting to really see that. And I mentioned yesterday, people are thanking me for inviting them to meetings.
Yeah.
Which never happens, right? But we're starting to see that shift from who are these people,
Right.
that are they even part of the company, to I can really be a part of this, and I am proud of it. At the very least, it's increasing pride of place and things along those lines.
You point out two things that I think are really important about building the foundation for collaboration. One is empathy and understanding, right? So you've come from a different part of the organization, and so you know what it's like to be not in CSR, and you can kind of bring that perspective and vice versa. In order to work together, we have to understand what the other person is thinking, and you kind of bring that with you, and you kind of embody that, and maybe you've also brought that to your team. The other thing is connection with the creation myth of the company, right? The founding story.
No myth.
No myth, but the original foundational principle of it, and really getting back to that. And so, how have you done? How have you brought empathy into your team, or how have you helped to build understanding, and how do you make that connection to the founding principles?
Well, I think from the CSR perspective, the empathy was always there.
How about from the other side?
And the other side, we like to think of ourselves as being not kind of your prototypical financial services company, but helping to remind the organization of where we come from and really what our purpose is. When we look at the purpose of the company, we're not talking about being number one in this market or number two in that market, or I think, which in many cases we actually are. We're talking a lot about what the purpose is behind it.
Right.
And while frankly the typical customer base for Prudential is a little bit higher than the working class poor, reaching back to that as our founding principles, and also seeing that play out as we're expanding overseas into markets where that really does align with where we are. It was interesting when we were talking to the senior management committee, they were saying, this is so much more valuable than advertising because it's real. That they're seeing this as something that is valued not only through employees, but customers, prospective employees, et cetera. So it's kind of changing the whole value proposition.
Thanks. Brad, I want to get your perspective on this question, but I also want you to kind of reflect on what you've just heard from Jeff and from Desiree and from other Jeff.
Sure. First, actually, I want to know, how did Jeff get the little built-in microphone?
Well, he was sitting in the back of the room, so he was smarter.
Special. Thank you. We're all about delivering results, so I would hope to think that most of our partners internally value us. From as I said earlier, we want to deliver results for the CEO. So, for instance, the CEO wants revenue, savings, employee satisfaction, and brand enhancement, right? So on the employee engagement side, which I'll talk to in a minute, we deliver the value by trying to engage employees to engage our customers around the environment. But operationally, from a cost savings perspective, we've done a lot of work. We have big goals around paper reduction and energy reduction. So in the process of working to reduce our paper internally, it's one of our biggest resource uses. We have found that there's actually business process improvements and efficiencies that we can make around paper that go beyond just the actual physical paper. It's around how does paper move throughout the bank, how's it stored, how's it reused, how's it shredded. But looking at the engagement piece specifically, because I know that's what we're talking about today, we have to look at what the business objectives are for the lines of business, for the stakeholders, for our partners internally, what those are. So we're a small team of 3. When we started 3 years ago, we needed to prioritize, and we placed some bets, and we said let's focus on retail to start, because we're a predominantly retail organization, about 16,000 out of the 27,000. And so we know that the retail has the primary objectives of obviously revenue, turning customers into fans, and employee satisfaction, which drives that retention. And the CEO likes retention numbers, obviously. So what we did is we designed a Green Leaders program to get out to the retail to help our senior leaders get the messages out to the front lines. And the best way to do that, this is where you build partnerships with your internal partners. The way we've done it with all of our programs is we identify a senior leader champion that'll help take on the environment in their line of business. In this case, it was a senior retail leader who decided, come to me, I want to work with you to co-create the program. I'm going to tell you about my line of business and what the important objectives are. We're going to develop metrics around the program. We're going to roll out a pilot. We rolled out a Green Leaders pilot and used a control sample so that we directed messages to certain parts of her organization, and others got the messages just through the standard corporate channels. And at the end of the day, we actually showed significant results. We got 20% increase in awareness of the environment through the Green Leader program. We had 5% increase in pride and commitment. Again, that pride and commitment drives satisfaction, which can help drive retention of employees. And 12% increase in customer comfort talking to customers. Again, driving that revenue, hopefully. Customers that care about the environment increasingly want to do business with a bank or a company that is environmentally responsible. And we had a 11% reduction in paper, so again, cost savings. So these things are numbers that we can show our business partners and show the senior leaders and the executives, saying that this does make a difference at the end of the day. And so that's a way to deliver value.
I want to delve down on 2 things you just said there, co-creation and experimentation or pilot programs. How did you actually do that co-creation? Was there, did you all go off-site somewhere, or how did you actually do that piece of it?
For the Green Leaders program specifically, it was a matter of sitting down with this senior vice president of this market and really understanding what her needs were, how does her world work, what are her particular business objectives, how does she also engage her own employees, how does the retail chain of command work. A lot of what we found earlier on is that we realized people consume information differently at every organization, and internally too. We have a variety of audiences. We have senior executives. They have a certain way that they want KPIs. They want bulleted kind of information. We have green enthusiasts out there that want more of that heart connection. They want to tell me how I'm helping save the world and give me things to do. We have people that just want information, or they want to be able to know how to share that information with customers. So understanding that retail chain of command and how communications work there, we were able to develop communications strategically for those types of audiences and deliver them through the channels that they consume, and that get that information right out in front of them.
So I heard you say you had to really sit and understand how her business worked and what her priorities were, and then you needed to design programs and communications that met the employees where they're at, so that you could communicate them in the ways that they're used to being communicated with, and in formats and content that they wanted to see. Yeah,
retail people want very specific, concise information in short little nuggets because they're so busy. They're in front of the customers, and so.
Yep.
And make it fun too. Bring them out of their sort of 9-to-5 daily grind. We make our communications very fun and engaging that way. So,
Sabrina.
Well, just to reflect on the group and then
Please.
hopefully make it relevant for the broader audience, I think what happens is that we could get disappointed if people don't know what we do, right? Organizations, large, small, whatever it may be, everything's always changing. Your business is changing. You have to evolve with it. So I think part of it, reflecting on, people may know, but it's also our responsibility, you've heard examples here, to always be advocates of what we're doing and connect it back, or listening to our business partners, whichever area of the company, and how it helps them achieve their objectives too. And make the connection, because CSR, broadly speaking, is not just a group in our companies or organizations, it's a way of doing business, right? And it's helping to evolve and make that happen, and it's not expecting people to make that connection. As the examples we're all providing it, and all of you, it's how we help them make that connection. We're not looking to do other people's jobs. We have certain programs, we have certain platforms, but then we're connectors as well. And then also aligning it. And I think that is something that is really important to emphasize, and takes a bit of energy to put behind, because you can't stop that, right? That's the year-round engagement from all of us that we have to keep doing and keep going
So
with.
connection and alignment.
And involvement.
And
I would
involvement.
add involvement, because we could talk about it, but until we show the value we can bring and how it benefits them, whether as an individual, as a group, or their whole department, I think that really helps lock it in further, and then you build off of it the next year.
Great. I'm going to ask these guys one more question, and I'm going to come out to you guys. So be thinking, because I'm going to rove around. I might pick on you, so get ready with your tough questions. I want to hear a story. I want you guys to give me a very short example, so be as brief as you can, be as concrete as you can, but I want to hear a story of a collaborative program that's working really well. Sabrina, I'm going to start with you.
Current one.
Mm-hmm.
We have a matching gifts program. We have a matching gifts program. And being a very large company, it was scoped in a certain way. And now we just had to harmonize it this year because of acquisitions. You bring in more companies to bigger family of companies. And so what's working well is we don't have a large team. What worked well is working in a matrix organization and finding, not knowing at first, finding the right people and points of contacts that are not necessarily your peers to actually have the communication plan, the education plan, the rollout, the execution, and getting into the operations of it. And why? Because matching gifts programs are part of a larger giving strategy and involvement, and it shows us also where employees want to spend their time. And so it's another metric for us. And so why it's working well is because a lot of the network, we mentioned earlier that we have a CSR network that's pretty loose. It helps us then know in a very large company who does what or who does it part-time, to then pull them in to execute something together when we normally wouldn't. And so we're all pretty proud of that, because in a matrix organization, sometimes it takes a while to get certain things done, but we've built that partnership, and so far so good. And it's about a month though, so.
So you said the right people who aren't necessarily your peers. How do you know who the right people are?
So when we have, the way we're structuring our company in North America, the CSR team broadly is very small.
Right.
But it could be a communications colleague, an HR colleague, it could be a marketing colleague, it depends on the company within our larger company that we partner with. And so sometimes you have, you're a part of a large company, and maybe there's infrastructure in one area, and the other area, you're keeping the integrity of what that other company used to be before it was part of this, where you have someone who's a jack of all trades, and you have to find that right person. When you all come together as companies, you don't necessarily know that. It's not like on an org chart, okay, this is the person if you ever wanted to harmonize matching gifts that you'd have to talk to. You know, you have to find that person, because we have so many programs that, or the deeper programs, you need to find the right people if you want the employees to know about it in the right way, not just in pockets, because this is a harmonized benefit.
Brad?
Thanks. So one of our the partnerships that's working really well is actually Katie Thiemann, who was up on stage with me yesterday on community relations at TD Bank. So the way we run I talked to you about communications. We run, it's a year-long program for us. So every 2 months we call drives. They're like campaigns, internal campaigns. Think of them as full of communications and challenges and contests and all that to drive those 4 H's throughout TD Bank. This month and last month, so March and April, we're working with community relations on what's called the Earth Week Volunteer Drive. And the idea is to raise awareness to the importance of volunteering in the community. And our partner in community relations, they have a great platform called the TD Volunteer Network, which helps you track hours, log events, recruit volunteers. It's a great platform. So we're connecting through our channels to our folks who care about the environment out there and say, as a lead up to Earth Week, it's important for you to get out in the community and support the environment in the community where it makes a difference. And so that's been a great partnership, actually, working with Katie to deliver that and start to see the excitement levels boil up. It was one of the issues, actually, that employees raised through surveys we did last year and focus groups. They said, we want to do more volunteering in the community. So we established that drive specifically to meet that.
Thanks. Jeff?
Sure. So I'm going to talk about one that's not quite public yet. So there'll be pieces that will not be in this.
It's just you and me talking, so you can tell
Yeah,
me.
we won't tell anybody else,
No,
right?
it's fine. Code of silence.
So we're working with our businesses on product. So we're collaborating with the businesses on product that reach into different markets that are not traditional for Prudential. So it's a different kind of collaboration than we might have seen before. So it's involving the professionals from the businesses and product development and bringing in the expertise that we might have in terms of different communities and different constituencies and pulling that together in ways that Prudential really hasn't, might not think of first. And so that's starting to bring that to the forefront. And what's interesting for us is we're starting to see some real excitement from them that here's an untapped market, here's a new opportunity for us, here's a new way of reaching a constituency that has needs. And so it's a different kind of collaboration than might have existed in the past, where we have engagement programs and frankly, there's an awful lot of personal employee giving and all that goes on, which is wonderful, but this is a different kind of feeling to it than might have existed before.
Desiree?
So at TIAA CREF, as I mentioned, April is National Financial Literacy Month, and we are huge supporters of financial literacy, given who we are as a financial services agency. And because, as Jeff talked about, this type of giving is very much skills-based, it allows our licensed financial advisors to go out into the community and really help people understand their finances. But the one area that has really been successful for us, tied to National Financial Literacy Month, is the work that we've done over the years with Junior Achievement and other youth-based organizations in a variety of communities. I believe in last year, we touched over 2,000 young adults to help them get a head start on understanding the importance of finances and having a budget and all the things that some adults are not aware of. And this year, I know that the goal is to increase that number. And in terms of collaboration, obviously, it takes a lot of communication to go out to our employee base to remind them that this is an opportunity for you to give back, to use your skills to serve your communities. We have to talk to the business unit leaders, say, look, you know what? Give them the time off. This is a service day, let them go out. And then it's also about making sure that from an organizational standpoint that you are doing this work in conjunction with strong local community organizations. So while Junior Achievement is just one of the larger ones, we have small regional offices throughout the country. So not every community organization has the brand, et cetera, that a Junior Achievement has. So you have to vet those organizations as well.
Jeff?
I think that it's interesting. How many people have tried to lose weight? It's not easy, right? I could never understand. My dad weighs like 240 pounds, and when I was as I was growing up, I was always, I could never understand why I couldn't lose weight, and I'm 46 now. I get it. It's hard. Change is hard, and I think it's harder if your wife or your husband or your kids bring donuts into the house, right? So that's why I think collaboration is so important. Is that if you have a support network around you to help you support you in your efforts to lose weight, you're much more successful. The same thing is true, I think, in the corporate space. If we're trying to inject this new kind of, virus into the system to change the system to act and behave in a different way, we need, inoculations. We need supporters to help us in that. And we've got a number of great stories. Project Belize, where we take 400 PWCers to Belize each summer to work in the community. That's a great project that we do with our human resources and sourcing teams. We've got our Earn Your Future program, which is our $160 million program supported on youth ed, and that takes support from human resources, from the marketing and sales, from all parts of the company to help us get that, because that's about 300,000 hours a year in terms of volunteering. But the one that it's not hugely scalable, but I think is interesting, and we've had a lot of success, and each of you may be able to implement it in your companies or organizations, and so it's really useful, is we have a corporate responsibility fellowship program where you can come and do a 3 to 6 month tour of duty in our team. So you can come from wherever you are, and if you understand our business, people are rolling on and off of projects all the time. So there's always blanks in people's kind of dance cards. And if we can match up those blanks to a need that we have in the team, we can do a tour of duty with the corporate responsibility team, which is a great opportunity for us to learn more about the day-to-day lives of our employees, and therefore, tailor our programs to meet their needs, but also for us to send emissaries and create ambassadors throughout the company. So that's been a really successful program, helping us to do more, but also helping us to understand better.
So CSR is a virus, and you're going to infect these other people with that virus.
It's true. I think very much along those lines, and I think that viruses are either expelled or they change the host organism. And so you have to think of, in my mind, it's less about how to measure GHG, and more about how to understand the culture of your organization and find those opportunities to inject the virus in a healthy and sustainable way.
I think that's really brilliant insight, to think systemically about how you can infect other people with passion and energy. Who's got a question? Throw up a hand and I'll run to you. This is my exercise time, so if you want to ask a question over here and then over there, that way I can run really fast. Tell us who you are and what your organization is.
Okay. Hi, my name is Charlene Walker. I'm with Kenneth Cole Productions, and I actually have a question maybe more specifically for Desiree. You spoke about the employee resource groups earlier that you use, and I know we're talking about working across boards and in different departments. And cross-departmental is really strong for us at Kenneth Cole. Do you find, when you're doing your employee resource groups, are these all across different departments that come in, and do you use them as influencers for the rest of the company to get on board?
Great question, absolutely. Previous life, I worked very closely with the employee affinity groups at my previous organization. And as I said, they broke down silos because the membership of those employee affinity groups come from different parts of the organization. So they have the opportunity to work with each other, engage with each other, where they might normally in a day-to-day situation might not. And when we identified, for instance, an employee holiday drive, where each employee affinity group selected a particular not-for-profit that they wanted to support, it was their responsibility to assist with the marketing, go out to their teams, their departments, their co-workers to help bring in the donations, whatever they might be, whether they were toys, Dress for Success, clothing, et cetera. So they really did, to your point, provide that opportunity to have them work not just with the employee affinity group, but across the organization, and bring in others who might not necessarily be a part of the affinity group, but were able to support the volunteer work that they were doing.
Sabrina, I know you wanted to get in.
The employee resource groups, I think, are amazing because they keep on popping up. We keep on adding more ERG groups. And why they are so effective is the power of peer-to-peer. And they're so engaged in what they're doing. So say it's Parents Connect. Well, then we're partnering with them to have something in the community focused on health, right? Because we're always emphasizing that, but from a parent perspective. Or if it's another group, it depends on which group it is, but there's a lot of cross-pollination as well, because they have an educational agenda for the organization. Well, coming out of CSR, we can customize that, and they're just such powerful groups in terms of mission-driven within your own organization, and they want to do that. I mean, I think we can't undervalue the passion and interest that these groups have that we share, right? And so they're a great network if you have them in your organizations, or if you don't, see if you could start them.
Next question. Mary's going to run the mic, so she's going to get the exercise instead of me. But again, tell us your name and your organization, please.
My name is Maria. I'm from JP Morgan Chase, and this question is for Brad. You mentioned that your employees engage your customers. How do they engage their customers in some of the initiatives that you are working on?
Thanks. A couple ways. So it's a hard thing, right? When we started 3 years ago, a lot of people hadn't even heard of us. They didn't know Environment existed at the bank. They hadn't heard that we went carbon neutral in 2010, and we have the nation's first net zero energy store in Florida. These are all important things for our employees to know. So in terms of the 4-H process that we've talked about, we want them to know these things first and foremost, but we want them to authentically talk to customers about the things that they're learning, and not just what they're learning, but that they're experiencing. So part of what we're doing with Katie is to get them out in the communities volunteering to bring them from the head through the heart, to make them connect with that, get them doing things, so that by the time they talk about it, they're actually talking about it with meaning. And we're fortunate enough that we have all of our new stores are all LEED certified, built to platinum or gold speculation standards, so that there are experiential cues for our customers too when they go into our stores and they're like, wow, hey, I can't believe I see this solar panel canopy in the drive-thru, or I had no idea your ATMs were 100% wind powered. The employee has an opportunity to talk to the customer about that in a meaningful way, as opposed to the sort of, hey, what'd you do this weekend? And that hopefully leads to a better relationship with that customer, and then increased sales and making them a fan.
Talking authentically, that's a great point. Does anybody else want to share anything about how you get employees to talk authentically about your programs, Sabrina?
This brings us back a couple years ago to the civic action role that I had during healthcare reform, now Affordable Care Act in place, was giving people the outline, but let them fill in the detail. Mm-hmm. And so you give them the outline of how you're able to talk about something, enough detail, but allow them to personalize it. And you had, whether of lunch and learns, or we had pizza and politics for that particular topic, help them find their voice in it, versus saying, this is what we want you to say. That's not authentic. And so people started to share their stories, and then we started posting them internally so they could see them on the video and then hear them. And it's what you'd say at a barbecue, what you'd say at a cocktail party. People were coming up with their examples, but knowing enough of the facts to then form their own opinion.
Yep.
So that was actually fun for people to share.
Beautiful. Yes, ma'am. Again, name and organization, please.
Hi, Spring Lacey from Prudential. To the question that you had, and Jeff mentioned there's some things that we've been working on. We have a brand new strategic plan that's not public yet, so we can't share it, but hopefully there's anticipation building, so mid-year when you guys hear it, you'll be excited as we are. But as we began to put together kind of what our new focus areas will be, we use plain language, and Jeff has this statement, he talks about either using Raisin Bran language or Great Dutch Raisin, right? What's Raisin Bran? It's raisins and bran cereal, right? And so we took that approach as we put together our focus areas, and as we are shopping this around within the company, we've gotten feedback of people telling us, you use regular language, and I actually feel like I can talk about it already. And I think it harkens back to some of what Derek said yesterday, like all of the words we use around impact and focus. Those aren't real words for people. And so I think even as we do our work and we begin to equip our employees with the information they need to communicate about it, the more we just use regular language, the more they will get to the point where they can talk about it authentically, because it just feels real and not like a bunch of jargon.
Yeah, so we don't need the CSR to English dictionary. We just use the plain English version.
Yeah, one of the things kind of building off with, and we'll not make this a Spring Jeff show, or the Jeffrey Springer show.
These chairs will fly if you really want to throw them.
But one of the things building off that we saw as we've been talking to different groups internally is when we finish, because we use that plain language, and to finish off the grape nuts, raisin bran everybody knows what's Raisin Bran. Nobody has a clue what's in grape nuts.
Right.
We only know
To
that
this
it's
day, yeah.
we only know it's not grapes nor is it nuts, right? But as we walk out of those meetings, people can give our elevator speech.
Right.
They say, I get it. This
Yeah.
is, I understand exactly what you said. It's something I can share going forward, and they can all relate to, because as I said before, it goes all the way back to the roots of the company. It's our lineage. So it's the plain language, and it's what we do.
Yep.
And so it's very easy to turn, I mean, it's a little bit trite, the employee ambassador thing, but they become ambassadors because they get it, they understand it, and they can repeat it right away, and they relate it back to what they do.
Yep.
Because it is so clearly aligned with what the company does. Everybody that walks out says, oh, I see my part in that.
Right.
So I think that really leads to that real, true employee engagement. And feel free to use the grape nuts like
Sabrina, real quick. I know you.
What is important about that too is being cognizant of your workforce, how many people are in the field and across the scope that you have versus like in a home office, because you can engage and educate and listen and have focus groups in an easier format when people are right in front of you. But when they're in the field, even from a business perspective, their territory is their business. And so they're not in that corporate world and that lingo to what you were both saying. And so sometimes when we involve them locally and just listen to the way they're describing it as well, then helps us then shape it at a larger corporate approach too, to make it more tangible for everybody.
Beautiful.
I think,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
one thing that Jeff said that I thought was really interesting and important is this idea of connecting with like who we are and what we do. I think big companies, if you're embedded in a big company, it's hard to really know who you are and what you do. I mean, these companies are huge, you know, and very complex. And in fact, we just did an exercise where we launched what we call our purpose. And this is an effort to connect us globally better, as well as all the disparate elements of our product or our service offering. And so our purpose now is to build trust and to solve important problems.
Yep.
And that helps us connect back. Obviously, it's an easy one for CR to connect to, but it's a good one for the company to better understand who it is and what you're joining when you join PwC. And I think that's true of many large and small organizations, to better articulate who you are and what you do, because I don't know that that's as easy to understand as we think it is.
Yep. Quick.
Yeah, one of the things we've found, and we see in our Japanese affiliate, so we're actually bigger in Japan than the US. And if you don't want to buy life insurance, we'll have you chat with one of our folks in Japan, and you'll be begging to buy life insurance because they view it as like their mission, their purpose in life is to make sure that their customers are fully protected. And it's astounding the passion that they bring to it. And so, you know, we're tapping into that kind of passion, and so that purpose built. But if you don't want to buy life insurance, I'll connect you up with them.
Other burning questions before we ask the closing? Oh, yes, go ahead, Kevin.
Thanks, and this is for Desiree as well. For those of us that don't have the diversity and inclusion connected in with our employee engagement, what would you say the one connection we should make, or the one thing that we should do to connect the two?
I would say the one thing that you should do or could do is to look at the demographics of your population, of your employee base, and understand what's important to them. I think when you were giving your acceptance remarks, Brad, you talked about how do you connect to your employee base when you're a Canadian firm, but recognizing that you have employees in Florida who have a connection to the Hispanic community. When you can do that, understanding the demographics of your employee base and what's important to them in the communities that they live in or even come from, that will help you enhance your strategy around CSR without necessarily having a full-blown diversity and inclusion effort.
Beautiful. Closing question. I want your number one tip for those folks in this audience who are looking to scale up their program or really bring in collaborators from other departments. How do they do it? What's the number one tip in 2 or 3 sentences? Sabrina.
Yeah. If your company has a measurement system in terms of performance, like what and how you get done, there's leadership competencies, and see if collaboration is in there. See if the behaviors that you need are in there, and then show your partners how what you're pitching aligns with those opportunities for them to demonstrate that, because their individual performance is going to get measured on that. So everything always comes back to measurement, whether it's internal or external, and find a way to help them shine with what you're trying to do at your organizational level, at the group level, and then at the individual level.
So aligning performance, aligning measurement, aligning messages with the organization and strategy.
And outcomes.
And outcomes. Beautiful. Brad?
So somewhat similarly, I'd say, this is, from an environmental perspective, it's, make sure it's not just an affinity program. It's a year-long thing. You're building it from a programmatic approach. You're finding out from your internal stakeholders what's important to them, what their business objectives are, so you can align with those. Make sure you measure. And finally, make sure that you figure out who your audiences are and how you can, and build the channels and the communications strategies so that you can connect with them meaningfully to bring them through the 4-H type of scenario.
Beautiful. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm sticking with the alignment theme that we have going here, and I think to the extent that you can align what you're doing with where the company is and where the skills are and the passions are for the company, I think that you're on the road, and if you're not aligned, I'm not sure that you really have a chance. And I think that to the extent you can make that happen, and you can make the employees understand that. Back to your point that it's in their best interest. Collaboration, by the way, is one of our competencies. To the extent that you can pull that whole package together, so you're aligned with the company, it's aligned with their personal interest and their financial interest, because it's part of how they get measured, I think you're on the road.
Beautiful. Desiree?
I echo all of that, but I would also include your values. TIAA Craft's motto, if you don't know it, is financial services for the greater good. That says a lot about what we do for our clients, for our employees, and for our communities, and certainly, what we are doing in that space ties back to being of service for the greater good. And when you can take a look at your value system and translate into all of the alignment that we've talked about, I think you'll hit a home run.
Awesome. Jeff?
I think that's all right. I think it's about alignment. It's about consistency. I think, your staff will be your biggest supporters, or they will be your biggest detractors. And they are best situated to realize whether your CR program is corporate propaganda or if it's a real commitment to making change within the company and within the community. And if it's corporate propaganda, they're going to sniff it out. And if it's not consistently through your development programs, through your connected to your values and your mission, connected in so many different ways, it's DOA.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to thank Jeff Senni, Desiree Dancy, Jeff Harrington, Brad Pierce, and Sabrina Spitaletta for a great panel. Nobody died. Everybody's still alive. Thank you very much.